The heritage of Buddhist art enshrines deeply philosophic ideas. The ancient treatise on art making, the Chitra Sutra, says that the eternal is best understood as without form, color, and smell. The stupa, the simplest of forms, was the focus of devotion in the Buddhist and Jaina faiths in India. Numerous stupas of the 3rd century BC are found on the tops of the low hills of central India. The preoccupation of the people was with that which was beyond material concerns. Railings of stone came to be made around the stupas, which separated the sacred space from the world outside. The earliest which survive are of the 2nd century BC. These were made under the rule of the Shunga kings, who personally worshipped Brahmanical deities. The railings of the Bharhut stupa and a stupa at Sanchi, both in central India, present the earliest Buddhist art. Here, for the first time, we see the Jataka stories, tales of the Buddha in his previous lives. The deities on these railings are those that represent the flowering abundance, vitality, the power and protection and the generosity of nature. These are the Yakshas, Yakshis, Nagas and Lakshmi, which are integral to the art of all Indic faiths. Beyond the railings, the simplicity of the stupa reminds us that the world of forms is but a passing illusion. All that is around us is only an ephemeral manifestation of the truth towards which we must strive. On top of the hill at Sanchi is a great stupa which was originally made in the 3rd century BC. In the 1st century AD, under the rule of the Satvahana dynasty, grand entrance gateways were added. These are profusely sculpted and present some of the finest early art of Buddhism. The Satvahana kings personally worshipped Brahmanical deities and were benevolent to the Buddhist Sangha. Meanwhile, from the 2nd century BC till the 2nd century AD, over 800 caves were excavated out of the hills of the Western Ghats in present-day Maharashtra. While houses for ephemeral individuals, including kings, were made out of perishable materials, that which was made in the service of the eternal within us was carved out of the heart of stone. The earliest halls of meditation have simple yet grand arches, modelled upon the bent wood architecture of that period. This motif, termed Chaitya arch in modern times, was first seen in the 3rd century BC caves of the Ajivikas at Barabar in Bihar. It was a pan-Indian motif in all faiths. At Bharhut and Sanchi, the Yakshas and Yakshis, representing the abundance and fertility of nature, were made individually. By the 2nd century AD, at the grand Chaitya-griha of Karle, they had come together as Mithunas, or loving couples. Their closeness to each other in natural affection presented the harmony of the natural order. These vital figures, full of the robust warmth and generosity of nature, are some of the finest art of the Buddhist tradition. These Buddhist caves were made in the rule of kings who worshipped Brahminical deities, the Satvahanas and the Kshatrapas. Meanwhile, in the 1st century AD, significant changes were taking place in the philosophic practices in North India. This was under the rule of the Kushanas, who came from southern China. They followed the Indic tradition of supporting the temples of all faiths. However, theirs was a different vision. In early Indic art, there were no portraits even of kings. Buddhas, or enlightened ones, and Jaina Tirthankaras were alluded to by symbols of their achievement. It was not their ephemeral personalities, but the ideas they embodied which were the message of the art. This is in keeping with the philosophical understanding that all individuals are but a passing illusion. The Kushanas had images made of themselves in royal shrines. Such portraits of kings did not last in Indic art beyond their rule. However, in this period a new focus came on the depiction of personalities in art. Images of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Jaina Tirthankaras, Shiva, Vishnu, Kartikeya, and other deities were created. The form in which the Buddha was presented was that of an enlightened being, one out of many, with 32 attributes that identified him as such. The summer capital of the Kushanas was at Peshawar in the Gandhar region. Concepts of Indic philosophy, which placed emphasis on the renunciation of worldly desires, were new to many here. In early Buddhism, the focus was within oneself, on the potential for enlightenment which is in each of us. In the Gandhara region, the attention began to go more towards a heroic personality of the Buddha and other Buddhas as distinct individuals. These could be prayed to for their help. In this period, the portrayal of deities became central to Indic art. These deities were the personifications of qualities. By meditating upon them, we awaken the best which is within us. By meditating upon the Buddha, we hope to awaken the Bodhi or true knowledge within us. The Buddhist site of Amravati is on the bank of the river Krishna in the eastern Deccan. The history of the Stupas at this site covers at least 1400 years, from the time of Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BC. In the 2nd century AD, the Satvahanas extended their rule to the eastern Deccan. Under them, the sculptural relief of the magnificent stupa reached its finest phase. The Krishna Valley continued as a most important center for the development of Buddhist philosophy under the Ikshvakus. In the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, a large number of monastic establishments were founded here for the residence, study, and worship of at least 4 different sects of Buddhists. The Ikshvakus, like the Satvahanas before them, personally worshipped Brahminical deities. Earlier art brought us the vital and living world of nature, in which man was only one part of its existence. By now the focus had shifted. Some of the earlier attention to the joy and frolicsome world of natural creation had been left behind. The emphasis had now come more on the life of men and women. By the 5th century, sublime forms were created in sculpture and painting. The noble aim for the artist was to create the human form which rose above itself. It was not the human being who was caught in the web of the material world. It was an embodiment of that which was eternal, that which was still, undisturbed by turmoil and cravings. In Western India, in the mid-5th century, under the rule of the Brahminical Vakataka kings, earlier cave sites saw renewed activity. As in the Indic tradition seen earlier, feudatories, ministers, and even queens freely followed the Buddhist faith and patronized Buddhist caves and art. The facades of the Chaityagrihas now became thickly populated with divine forms. Earlier, the interior of the hall of meditation was simple and unadorned. The focus was on the final truth, which was formless. Now, it was the beauty of form which served to reveal the grace which underlies creation. A number of grand viharas for the residence of monks were excavated in this period. These were profusely painted. Ajanta is the only site where a large body of paintings survive till today. These exquisite murals are amongst the greatest treasures of the entire heritage of Buddhist art. The caves of the 5th to the 7th centuries AD in Western India present developments which had taken place in Buddhist philosophy by then. At Kanheri and at Ajanta, the 5th century saw the making of colossal Buddhas over 22 feet high. This was the beginning of the tradition of Brihad or colossal Buddhas, which spread to Kashmir and to other Asian countries. By the 4th century, the method of yoga or Yog Tantra was established in Indic thought. It was a graded path of evolution through discipline and meditation. Cave 90 of Kanheri of the early 6th century has the earliest surviving mandala, which presents such a graded path. In earlier Buddhism, the responsibility of salvation lay entirely upon the individual and his own efforts to discipline himself. In time, compassionate beings on their way to enlightenment, or bodhisattvas, were conceived. They delayed their own salvation to help all sentient beings on the path. This new branch of Buddhism soon had many followers and began to call itself the Mahayana order or the Great Vehicle. In Kanheri Cave 41 of the late 5th century is the first known depiction of the Bodhisattva of Lokiteshvara with 11 heads. By now, the Buddhist faith had developed a pantheon of deities. These developments had taken place largely in the plains of eastern India. By this time, great centers of Buddhist study had come up in Bihar. These had the bountiful support of Buddhist and Brahminical kings of the region, and they developed into vast monastic universities. The greatest of these was at Nalanda. It was a hub of learning where pilgrims and scholars came from all corners of Asia. Vikramshila was another great university, which was founded towards the end of the 8th century by King Dharmapala. By this time, Buddhism had entered its third major phase, the Vajrayana school. In earlier Buddhist thought, liberation was possible only through many lifetimes of effort. The Vajrayana offered the possibility of nirvana within a single lifetime. At the heart of this system was the teacher-initiate relationship, where the seeker was guided by his teacher. Complex rituals, mantras or chants, and mudras or hand movements of Vajrayana Buddhism were codified in the form of tantras. Tantra literally means to carry on knowledge. The emphasis in this period was on the intellectual quest. This is constantly reflected in the art. The focus came on the dynamism of the intellect, which analyzes the mental processes of the realization of the truth. The qualities which move us towards a realization of the truth were presented in a manner which left no room for ambiguity or doubt. This was Vajrayana Buddhism, the vehicle of the thunderbolt, whose logic was as clear and as striking as a clap of thunder. It was also as indestructible as a diamond. In the high Himalayan mountains is the verdant valley of Kashmir. Amidst its great natural beauty, the thoughts of man have constantly turned to the wonder of creation. Unlike earlier austere forms of Buddhism, the Mahayana and Vajrayana schools flourished here. There is a very special quality of joyousness which pervades the art of this land, which is blessed by the bounty of nature. The formidable mountains that ring the valley did not prevent Kashmiri monks from traveling constantly to Tibet, Central Asia, and China. Between the 4th and 10th centuries, they conveyed the teachings of Buddhism far and wide. The first great diffusion of Buddhism in the Trans-Himalaya was in the 8th century. Guru Padmasambhava of the Nalanda University established the faith in the entire mountainous region, from Ladakh in the west to Arunachal Pradesh in the east. King Yeshe O came to the throne of Guge in the 10th century, at a time when Buddhism had considerably declined in the Trans-Himalaya. He sent Rinchen Zangpo and other scholars to Kashmir to bring back scriptures with the true knowledge of the faith. Rinchen Zangpo spent 17 years in Kashmir. In the years to come, he became known as the revered Lutsawa, or Great Translator. King Yeshe-O and his successors made 108 monasteries across the high-altitude plateau. These were painted and sculpted by the artists who were brought from Kashmir. This period is known as the second great diffusion of Buddhism. As in earlier art, the art of these monasteries presents a deep and inward look on the faces of the figures. What makes the paintings and sculptures here unique is a sense of lilting grace which awakens joy within us. The experience of joy lies at the heart of the Buddhism which came from Kashmir during the second diffusion. The concept of yoga stresses the oneness of everything in creation. This art, permeated with a sublime sense of grace, brings the worshipper closer to that ecstatic realization. All humans are aware of the pain of life in this world. Thus, this philosophy was received with open arms wherever it travelled. This philosophy also took with it the marvelous concept of deities. Deities are personifications of ideas and qualities. The qualities such as wisdom, compassion, kindness, and courage are within us. We look upon their representation in art. We focus our attention upon these till they are awakened within us. These grow and fill us completely till we become the deity. This culture, which looked always beyond the material aims of life to the eternal, was accepted with open arms in the whole of Asia. Early Theravada Buddhism travelled in the 3rd century BC to Sri Lanka and then to other countries of Southeast Asia. In the 1st millennium AD, Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism spread northwards to Central Asia, China, Korea and Japan. Everywhere, local schools of art sprang up, in which were created numerous deities for meditation. The art of Asia has been informed by a great vision of the eternal harmony of the world. It is a vision of compassion that has shaped the culture of a continent.
Buddham saranam gacchami, dhammam saranam gacchami, sangham saranam gacchami, buddham saranam gacchami, dhammam saranam gacchami.